In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the brake master cylinder on this Mazda 6. It's located right next to your battery in the engine compartment, so let's get started. On the driver's side of your engine compartment next to your battery, you'll see the brake master cylinder reservoir. I'm going to start by popping the cap off and removing all the fluid that's in it, or as much as I can. That way I make a little bit less of a mess when I take the lines out. There's a screen in here, a little filter. Try to get it out of there so you can stick your fluid extractor in. And I have this hand pump that is basically a fluid extractor. I'm going to stick the straw of it in there and, well, pump away basically. Suck all that fluid out. Well, unfortunately this is about as much as I can remove, so this is going to be, it's going to have to be good enough for us. Now I'm going to put some absorbent pads down here because I don't want to get any of this brake fluid on anything, especially not a painted surface. Brake fluid will eat away the paint really quickly, so if you do get it on anything, try to wipe it off as quickly as you can with water or brake parts cleaner, and just do your best to keep the spillage at a minimum. However, keep in mind, as soon as we break those lines free, a lot of brake fluid is going to want to spill out. So I'm putting plenty of absorbent pads down here to help collect the fluid. There we go. Now take a 12mm wrench. I recommend a flare nut wrench. It grabs onto a couple extra sides and is a lot less likely to round off the fitting and break these fittings free. Usually the fittings on the master cylinder don't have this problem, but sometimes they can get stuck on the line, in which case it'll actually twist the line with the fitting. That is definitely something you want to avoid, so if that is the case, turn it back and forth, try to break it free. Otherwise you'll be making a new line if it breaks. Just going to remove this fitting all the way. Once it breaks free, you can just use a regular 12mm wrench. It's going to be a lot easier. Okay, this line looks like it's pretty much broken free. Once it is, you should be able to pull it away. And we'll do the same to the other line. There we go. Break that one free. If you're going to use pliers like this, be very, very gentle. I'm doing it because it's a lot quicker than trying to use that wrench, but I'm putting almost no pressure on the pliers. Okay, there we go. Both lines are out. At this point, you'll see two 12mm mounting nuts that mount the brake master cylinder onto the brake booster. We have to get both of those mounting nuts off. I'm going to make sure these pads stay here so that brake fluid doesn't leak all over the place. And once those mounting nuts are off, they actually hold on a bracket. You can see this large bracket here. So we'll have to pull that off first, then the master cylinder. Take an extension with a swivel if needed, and a long ratchet so you can get some leverage and get these mounting nuts off of here. Okay, set that aside. There is another mounting nut equally on the other side. Also 12mm. Take that one off as well. There's that second mounting nut. On the other side, you'll see a level sensor here, the connector for it. You're going to have to unplug that, press on the connector, slide the wire out of the way. At this point, grab the master cylinder, wiggle it to break it free. This bracket may need to be pulled off first. There's an O-ring that seals it up in there. A lot of times that O-ring gets stuck, so you have to wiggle it and pull it until it pops out of there. There we go. Now, you'll be able to pull the master cylinder right up and out. And there it is. Now grab your new master cylinder and slide it into position. Pull these lines out of the way, and this rod that sticks out of the booster, you're going to want to make sure it lines up with the center of the master cylinder. Once you line everything up, make sure that everything slides into position as it should. Perfect, just like that. It's got a couple O-rings back there that need to line up. Make sure they bottom out nice and smooth, which they did for me. So I'm gonna put this bracket up and over the studs. If everything is going back together and it's seating itself smoothly, you have nothing to worry about. It is properly seated. If something isn't, you would know because it's not going to actually go back together. So at this point, I'm gonna put the mounting nuts on so I can secure the master to the booster. Okay, I got both mounting nuts started. Let's snug them up. As I tighten these, I'm going to snug them up fully. The torque for them is 15 foot-pounds. However, because I need a swivel to get to them, I can't really torque them accurately, so I'm just going to do my best to tighten them up at 15 foot-pounds approximately, which isn't all that much, so basically just make them snug, give them about 1/8 of a turn. That's bottomed out right there, snug, and 1/8. Let's do the same to the other one. It's bottomed out and snug, and a little extra. All right. At this point, with the master cylinder attached, I did not bench bleed it because I prefer to do it in the vehicle. I have 2 lines here that I flared with the same fittings that are on the vehicle side. You can do this, you can buy some pre-made lines, they also make some plastic ones, or you could do it different ways. There are multiple ways of bench bleeding this, and you can even do it before you install it. However, I like to do it this way because I can operate it through the brake pedal. It's a lot easier, and all I have to do is, well, sit in the seat and pump the brake pedal. So I'm going to fill this up with brake fluid. These lines here dip about 1/4 of the way down into the reservoir. So if I fill this to the max line, the ends of these lines should be submerged in fluid. And the reason that's important is because as I let go of the brake pedal, I want the lines to pull back clean fluid and not air. This is the whole point of this. I want to basically bleed the air out of the system. When I push on the brake pedal, it will push air and fluid through the lines. That's basically how we're gonna clear, and I'm not so worried about the lines. Obviously, these are coming off, but the internals of the master cylinder in there need to not have any air bubbles. So doing this, we'll be pushing those air bubbles through the lines and into the reservoir. Air rises to the top and naturally will bleed itself. At this point, it's pretty full. It's basically at the max line. I can see the ends of the lines that are pretty much submerged in fluid here. So at this point, I'm gonna go inside the vehicle, pump the brake pedal, and that should push air through. You may or may not see the fluid level drop just a little bit. I will monitor it. When you pump the brake pedal this way, go slow. You don't wanna go fast. You don't want anything to shoot out and spray it all over the place. I'm in the vehicle now, pumping the brake pedal really slowly. I'm gonna go all the way down till it hits the floor, which is right here. These have a long brake pedal travel. I'm going to hold it on the floor. I'm going to pull it back slowly. There we go. And I'm just going to keep repeating this process. I'm going to do it a bunch of times. I like to do it about 10 times to start. That should basically get rid of all of the air that's in the lines, and then I'll double check. If you have a second person, a helper that can watch while you're pumping or pump for you, would be great because you can actually see when the bubbles are done bleeding out. I'm still pumping. This is about 10 to 15 pumps here. I'm going very slowly, and I'm noticing that there are no more air bubbles. There haven't been for a while, and at this point the fluid level is rising and settling just a little bit. That's normal. You're pumping and pushing fluid and pulling it back, but no more air bubbles means we are good to go. So I can take those lines out and of course put the actual vehicle's lines on. So let's do that. At this point, the master cylinder is completely bled and it is ready to have the original vehicle's lines put in. I'm going to start with the rear one. It really doesn't matter which one you start with. I just want to get that one out of the way since it's further back. And I'm going to take my line off. As soon as I crack this free and remove it, it's going to want to leak because it's, well, full of fluid. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I do this. And I'm going to try to be as quick as possible to put the original line on. That way I lose as little fluid as possible. I do still have my absorbent pads down here to hopefully try to catch as much of the brake fluid that's going to leak. There we go. The master cylinder is also going to leak as the line stays open, or as the port for the line stays open. So keep that in mind. Once you get this lined up, my fitting doesn't spin very easily, so I can't spin it by hand. It's just a little bit stuck on here, so I'm going to try to turn it with a wrench. Try to get those threads caught on. Okay, I think I got this one started. Yep, that one's started. I did lose quite a bit of brake fluid on this one, so I will top it off before I disconnect the next line. Just keep that in mind. You want this master cylinder to stay full at all times. If you drain it, you're going to have to bleed it again. Oh, that's bottomed out. So I snugged it up. I'm using a short wrench. I'm going to come back with a full-size wrench and tighten it up. That way I know it is properly tightened. I'm going to use my flare nut wrench, stick it on here, and give it a good snug. There we go. About a quarter turn after it bottoms out. Maybe an eighth if that's what feels right. Basically, you just want to crush the end of that fitting a little bit, or the line where it's flared. Just enough to create a nice tight seal. That should be plenty tight right there. Just going to double check it quick. Yep, that's tight. All right, now let's do the same to the other line. I topped off the master cylinder again, that way it wouldn't go dry. I'm going to pull this line out and basically do the same thing again. Make sure you have enough padding here to absorb all of the leakage. If the lines are stiff, you can put a wrench on the fitting to twist it back and forth a bunch of times. That should help free them up just a little bit, especially if they're covered in fluid. Okay, this one's going in a lot easier than the other one, just because it kind of slid right into place with these fittings. If they're not perfectly lined up, they will not thread on. And a lot of times, it's pretty difficult to get them perfectly lined up, especially if you bend the line a little bit to maneuver the master cylinder out. Well, this one's bottomed out, so I'm going to grab my wrench, my longer wrench that is. Tighten this one up. Once again, you just want to give it a nice squish after it bottoms out. That should be plenty right there. You don't want to break the line or strip anything out. At this point, before I go any further, I'm going to clean everything up. I don't want that brake fluid sitting there. And remove my pads that are soaked in brake fluid and spray a bunch of brake parts cleaner to get rid of all of the old brake fluid. Okay. That should be pretty clean. It's important to have it nice and dry, especially at the fittings here, because you definitely want to know if you have a leak, because you don't want to confuse that leak for residual fluid. On the other side of the master cylinder, now that everything is done, let's plug in this connector for the level sensor. Line it up and press it in. Make sure it clicks. Perfect. Let's put back this little filter. Make sure it goes all the way down. There we go. Twist it to lock it in place, and the cap Now, obviously, before you put the cap, make sure the fluid is topped off. Mine is at the full line, and regardless, I have to keep topping it off to bleed the brakes anyway. You do want to do a full brake bleed after this, so let's do that. The sequence for bleeding the brakes is starting at the right rear caliper. That's the passenger side rear. Then you work your way to the left rear, driver's side rear, then the right front, that's the passenger side front, and then you finally end with the driver's side, the left front wheel. So basically you start at the furthest and work your way to the closest wheel from the master cylinder. All right, I have an assistant in the vehicle ready to pump up the brake pedal. The master cylinder is topped off and we are at the right rear wheel. Go ahead and pump the brakes. Okay, they're holding pressure, so I'm going to take that cap off. I have a little fluid reservoir here with a hose. I'm going to crack the bleeder screw free with a 10mm wrench. Fluid, you'll see this in this clear hose, fluid will go through, as well as any air bubbles that are in the system. Once the pedal has reached the floor, I'm going to close this off, and let's repeat the process. Go ahead and pump again. We're going to do this as many times as it takes. There we go, holding again, so crack the bleeder screw free. You want to see nice clean fluid and no air bubbles. Let's do this again. All right, let's do this one more time. Perfect. Let's do this one last time. All right, no air bubbles, clean fluid. You can let go of the brake pedal now. I'm going to remove my collection bucket here, my reservoir. If any fluid's spilt, go ahead and clean it up. You definitely don't want to confuse this for any leakage. Once you're done, make sure that bleeder screw's tight and put the cap back on. Let's top off that master cylinder and move over to the left rear wheel. We're at the left rear wheel. Let's pop off this little cover. Go ahead and pump up the brakes. All right, holding pressure. Put your 10mm wrench on here, crack the bleeder screw open. There we go, fluid comes out. Let's go again. All right, that was nice and clean. Let's do it one more time. Perfect. One last time, pump again. All right, I like this. This is nice and clean. You can let go of the brake pedal now. I'm going to remove my reservoir and clean off any fluid that may have leaked. Cap this back off. And let's top off the master cylinder and move on to the right front wheel. Now I'm at the right front wheel. I'm going to pop off the cover here. Go ahead and pump up the brakes. Okay, get your wrench on here. Crack it open. All right, let's go again. All right, go again. There we go, let's go again. This is really dark fluid, so I'm going to wait until it lightens up a little bit. That would be the fresh fluid. Getting much better here. Let's do it one more time. All right, one last time. Much better. No air bubbles, nice and light in color. You can let go of the brake pedal. I'm going to remove my collection bucket and clean off any residual here. We did have a little bit of spillage, so I'm going to make sure that gets cleaned up. Cap it back off. Hopefully you have all these caps still. These protect the bleeder screws from getting clogged up. And let's move to the last wheel, which is going to be the driver's side front wheel. I topped off the master cylinder. We're at the last wheel, last caliper that is, the left front. Pop off this cover. Go ahead and pump up the brakes. Okay. Open up that bleeder screw and go ahead and pump again. All right, pump again. This is also very dark fluid, so I'm going to wait until it lightens up. No air bubbles though, so that's good. Okay, pump again. All right, that's getting better. Pump again. Okay, let's do it a couple more times. Pump again. That's getting better. Let's do it one last time. Pump again. All right, I like it. No air bubbles, clean fluid. You can let go of the brake pedal now. I'm going to remove my hose and clean off any spillage here. Put this cover back on. And there you have it. At this point, if you feel that you need to repeat the procedure, go ahead in the same sequence until you have no more air bubbles or clean fluid. Mine is all set to go, so I'm going to put the wheels back on. Wheel torque is 80 foot-pounds. Let's top off the master cylinder one last time before we call it this done. Make sure it's all the way up to the max line. You can see it. There's a mark on each side of the master cylinder reservoir. If any brake fluid spilt while you topped it off, clean it off, cap it, and there you have it. Job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.